Man, you're doing some phenomenal work out there. It took me a minute to know what you meant when you said AI. Ancestral intelligence. And I think, Hitesh, you also really are a great source of AI in that context. And I'm wondering how we can clone you, because we don't want our library to burn down with you. So if we can have 5 clones of you, we'll be safe for the future. Well, at this point, ladies and gentlemen, I want us to swim across the high seas to Sweden and go to Stockholm. Pernilla, what do we have in Stockholm?
Asante sana, Eric, Hitesh, and Tilal. Beauty happens when we make functional and pleasant outdoor spaces for all living things. That is the statement of the next speaker that you will meet on this stage. But first, do we have any students in this space that were part of the student competition? Anyone? You, over there. Anyone else? Over there. Okay, huge applaud. Thank you for making yourself known. In a little while, we will have a Q&A, which involves Hitesh, Tilal, and Jens, who will speak soon. So if you are now burning with questions for Hitesh after this presentation, you can go into your Menti, but please write who you are directing them to, since we will have a Q&A with several people. So you can just write, Hitesh, I want to know this right now, if you want to. And we'll take care of the questions in a little while. Playing, being open and inclusive, both in the small scale and the large scale of the urban fabric. Those are signature marks of this award-winning and innovative agency, BOGL. And its co-founder and creative director is here with us to share his practice. And you know exactly how to greet him.
It's great to be here and really humble after these great talks that we saw in Nairobi. Fantastic. It reminds me that our worlds are very different, but we share the same world. And that's a little bit what I'm going to talk about today. I represent an office based in Scandinavia, working all over Scandinavia, but have offices in Copenhagen and Oslo. In recent years, our focus has been on climate adaptation projects. I've given a lot of thought of what I wanted to discuss today. A few years ago, I think this talk would have been easier. I would have passionately talked about our projects and shared, delightfully shared all what we are working with. Believe that we were making a significant progress. Our focus was on creating vibrant, recreational green spaces, collaborating with site-specific architectural design and addressing climate issues. But I think I find myself much more uncertain now. Over the past few years, I've questioned our profession and its impact. I've been torn between hope and despair for our planet's climate. Witnessing global events like heat waves, drought, cloudbursts, rising sea level, erosion, species decline, pollution, deforestation, overfishing, and as we heard earlier, hunger. It's left me disillusioned. It seems we consistently prioritize humans' need before everything else. So, in my moments of despair, I have questions if we do matter at all, if what we do has any meaning at all. I've been questioning if we simply should close the office, if we should find something else to do. And the answer of that is, of course, that there is also hope. And in that lies our ability to bring beauty and change. When I see the positive transformation of products and our profession can bring, I'm reminded of this value. We can foster communities and social interaction in local neighbors, connecting cities, promoting bicycling, addressing rainwater and cloudburst issues while simultaneously enhancing local biodiversity for insects, birds, and amphibians. This reminds me that we possess the tool and the responsibility to make things slightly better. For us in BOGL, the office, we really truly believe that understanding the essence of a place is crucial. And as Hitesh just told us in the previous lecture, when he talked about understanding the land is crucial, I think we share a similar thought. Landscape is shaped by time, often both cultural and natural processes. These pictures, as you see here, it's not far from where I grew up in Sweden. It's a small town close to the Norwegian border. This used to be farmland, all of this picture, but Norway was occupied in the war, and in order to protect ourselves from Germany, these concrete blocks was put up. I don't think that would have stopped Germany, but now, some 70 years later, they are still there. And you can see on the picture on the left side, forests arise, and on the right side, there is still farmland. I think that this reminds us of how cultural and nature work together. We create and change the landscape, and that gives us a big responsibility. It also, in this picture, you can see that the stones also have some sort of beauty. They emphasize the landscape. They remind us of the past and who we are. To understand a place for us is crucial, as I said. It's a way to give a place identity and belonging. It's a way to work with people and what is already there. It's a way to understand what natural habitat we are surrounded by, and it's a way to dealing with the topography and the water management. And I think a blessing in our field is that every product is different. Every site has its special values, it has its special users, it has its special topography, and as we can see all around the world, this is different. And that gives us the tool and the possibility to treat everything with care and try to develop the project independently. And in that lies the potential of creating a poetic and meaningful landscape. This is a mapping for a project that I'm going to show after this, is how we try to work with capturing a space. It's trying to look at the larger landscape, it's trying to see what the history is about, it's trying to look at the geology of the site, the architecture around, it's to talk with the people and the users, it's sketches, it's models, it's studies, it's a dialogue that is about trying to understand a place. And this lecture now, I will try to show 6 examples of our work and how we have worked with the place. I will try to keep them short and focus on the essence of dealing with a place. The first project, as you can see here, is Sundby Österplatz. Probably difficult to pronounce for most of you. This is a square that was run down. It was lacking a kind of identity for the people living there. And it's also an important square because it represents a large city area in Copenhagen. So the task was to give the square a purpose, to connect people, to create communities. It was also a large wish to make it more green. It was a completely hard square before. And it was very important for the people to bring an identity into this place that they could feel represented by. So when we started to talk with the people living here, what this place represented for them, it was very clear that the landscape around was what they identified themselves with. What is interesting in this part of Copenhagen, that you have two of the largest natural resources, nature areas, and they're both man-made. It's completely man-made. One is landfilling made for 100 years ago, and the other is a large coastal area that is also man-made. So when we start to work with it, we try to understand what was the landscape and what was the processes behind it. This, that we transform the land, and if you look a little bit further south from this area, you have beautiful chalk cliffs, as you can see up in the right corner, created by time and evolution in the landscape. And bringing that into the site using the materials that we would find in the ground, such as sand, clay, chalk, lime, and bring that into the project. It was really interesting also now when we come, how much these, for example, you have this chalk limestone, they have the fossils, and you can see children and adults, they're finding these reminiscences like traces in the landscape, and it has an importance. Another importance of this project is, of course, also to bring the green in to reduce the space. Sometimes we have too much space, so trying to lower the surface, keeping these walls up, and trying to define and make the space a bit more intimate. Also trying to use the landscape itself as where you sit and have recreation, as you can see on this picture. It's interesting to see how the project now connects with the surrounding. There is a school, there is a playground, there is a sports hall, and you would have thought that all these functions would make an ideal placement for a square. Now the green structure is going out and capturing these different functions and binding it better together. Here again, some pictures showing the materiality that I think goes strong through the project with these limestones, the shadow, the noise of the gravel when you walk on it, and the different meetings between the materials. You could say this is not important, it's just aesthetics, but I think it creates a meaning and a belonging for the site. And if you have meaning and belonging in a site, I think it also is something that you feel when you visit the site. You can feel if this is a place people care about. So here you can see a large overview picture how this creates this spider web, and it goes out and captures the city, connects it, creating pathways, but also small parks and gardens that attaches to the sites and the different functions. The next project is completely different. This site didn't have any context at all. This is a site that in the 60s was a gaswork industry, and in 64, one of the gas containers exploded. Several people died, and the whole area was completely devastated. And then, because of housing needs, they made a very fast plan, building these housing blocks that you can see, I don't know if you can point, on the sides without much care. Just, I think you know this in most countries, you have these areas. And on top of that, they put no man's land in between because it was supposed to become a highway cutting through the area. So because it was industry before, the area is cut, divided of big roads circulating around, making a barrier. And on top of that, you also had a future motorway lying in the middle. So again, here we try to find out how to find and capture this space. And the reason we could do a park here is because they made a railway going underneath instead of a highway. So it's about making a park on top of a railway. A technical, very complicated project. But again, we had to find something that meant meaning. And when we also here, we had a lot of interview and discussion with the people living there. And then it was very clear that this collectively memory of this explosion and that devastating happening so many years ago, most people didn't even live at that time, but it was still something that people talked about. So we thought, okay, maybe it's this old industry, maybe that identity is stronger than these building blocks from the 60s. So as you can see in the plan, there is some lines. Those lines are representing the explosion lines from where the gas cylinder was placed, creating lines that cuts through the area. But the lines also have a different meaning. They are connecting the two sides. Because this was been a very hard area, there was a rivalry between the two housing areas, almost like a war. So a large part of this project is also connecting the two sides and trying to heal that wound that this has made. So you can see the site here. Here you can see the tunnel going in under the railway. And you can see that there is not much on the site when we started. There is some difficulty in this project. One of them is that building on top of railway means that they didn't have dimensioned it for any load, so we couldn't really do anything on top of the railway itself. They also put very heavily soil, clay soil, so as you can see on this picture, it's been lying that for the years, but nothing grows in it. It's completely a dead moon-like area. And this made a large this was kind of a crucial thing for us because we wanted a really green and flourishing park, but we didn't have the money to exchange all the earth, and that would also have been really climatic problematic. So we tried to find out how we could improve the soil without changing it. So we had a dialogue with the municipality, planting herbs 2 years before we started with the actual construction. So by planting herbs where you have long roots, strong roots that goes down, we could use nature itself to kind of renew and clear a path in the soil. These roots, when they rot, they leave drainage in the soil, and after that we could take them away, put a thin layer of earth, and then start the actual planting of the park. This is a picture of how it looks now. It's a park where we plant really small trees, like almost forest trees, because we know that small trees has a better possibility to find its way through this very hard soil rather than planting big trees. So in this picture you also can see that we have the lines from the explosion. You can see that there is some cut lawns that in the future is going to be small meadows or small pockets in a forest-like park. There is some larger lines where you can see that the topography is lifted up. That is hedges. That's the only place where we plant bigger trees, and that's taken from the Danish cultural landscape where you protect from the wind. So it also has a function to kind of to limit the wind that comes from the west. And I think it's a project that really deals with time. So now you have this, it's quite overview, but with time the vegetation will grow up and it will really change it. Another important thing is, of course, this bicycle track runs through the area. And here you can see a picture on the history that we use. This is an interpretation of this old silo that exploded that now is used for swings for children play. And we have all through the project, this color, black color goes through, and with these structures binds the project together. The next project, also very different, is lying in Thisted, northern Denmark. This is a small fisher town that has a long history. It's almost dates back to medieval time. And here we won a competition. The idea here was to clear a path through the city so you could make a city loop. And in the competition breeze, they wanted to tear down all these old buildings that were blocking the way to make a big square here, like you also have here and here. So it became the city loop. We disagreed with this approach. We thought that these old buildings contained an history and there was a value on the site. As you can see on the right picture, this is an old blacksmith, that smithy, I think it's called. That is the only that was left in the city. It used to be several of them all over. And it's also in these backyards, that's where the life was lived. Here was horse stables, here was people living, working, children were running, playing. And we thought if we could keep some of that identity, restore the buildings, transform this area, and not demolish it as was asked for. Here you can see some pictures of the site. You can also understand the municipality wanted to clean up and remove these spaces because it looks really run down. It looks almost frightening, as you can see. But there is a lot of history, and another thing, in this part of Denmark, it's really, really windy. It's out on the west coast. It's windy all the time. So these big squares are not super pleasant to be in with this heavy wind. So as you can see on these pictures, we try to work with small squares. We try to renovate the old smiths by just taking off the roof, putting on a glass roof, making it an open public square, but sheltered from rain and wind. Keeping all the buildings, as you can see here, but really working with something that almost kind of takes away the feeling of inside and outside. Really looking at the buildings as something that is connected with the outside world. And in this you can also see all these pockets of small passages and squares that are put into this. Another important task here is of course how to do this, respect the future, respect the history and work with the existing tradition, but also bring it into future with new functions. So we restored the buildings, gave them new function. There was already a library, an antiquariat bookstore. We gave him some new windows, as you can see here. We kept the old chimney and kept the walls or restored them with recycled bricks and put a new lid on top of that. Also having some water elements and working with the chalk that also here is very dominant in this region of Denmark. And here you can see a new picture with this old smithy in the middle, and it really kind of naturally fits in, and of course it fits naturally in because it's what was always there. And here you can see we kept the old cobblestones. We added this limestone on the sides to make it enabled for handicapped, for universal passage. We cut an opening for the antiquariat, so we got some new light, put some benches on, made these small opens a little as possible, and then you can see the rooftop on top of the smithy. We really try to keep the landscape as simple as possible so that the flourishing landscape or flourishing architecture that was really this collage had that the value of that kind of came to its right. Here is another thing. We're not building architect, but in this project we made small transformations to make the buildings function. For example, here put in a new window and a new stair for the bookstore to function, adding a small seat and a scene. Here you can get a sense of this small square with the garden and the opening into the smithy and the glass roof. It's interesting to see how they use it today. This is used for picnic for the children, it's birthday parties, they also have opera concerts, they have a dance education, there's poetry sessions, small concerts and so on. And here you can see also this small water thing and the chimney which is placed the pizza oven. There is a outdoor kitchen here. Here the doors, you can close them if it's windy. There is also all these small corners. This is a small corner outside the bookstore, always working with this materiality that binds the area together for pathways for the enabled people. I'm jumping quickly into the next topic. The time is running fast, I can see. This project is about water, and I can say since 2010-11 in Copenhagen, landscape architects work almost in all projects with handling and managing rainwater, climate adaptation in different kinds. And this is an interesting project in the way that it's a private property, but it's paid by the public. So it's the municipality and the water supply that pays to restore a courtyard. And they do that because it's a potential. You can see here in Copenhagen, you have a lot of these courtyards. So if we could retain the water, hold it back, and store it inside these private courtyards, there is a lot of capacity that could save the city from being flooded other places. So in order to do that, of course, we had to have a lot of discussion with the people living here, handling 2,000 cubic meter, 100 event in 100 years. That's what the calculation says. That means that we can store water in an extreme event up towards 10 centimeters on the facades. We're trying, of course, keeping most of the water in a 10-year event inside the central parts of the project. Another important thing of this project was that we said we only want to use recycled materials. This has almost succeeded. There is, of course, some few new materials, but All the pavements, as you can see here, are reused, recycled materials from other places in Copenhagen. All the windows and the sheds and the wood are taken from recycled windows or leftovers from the wood industry. And it's kind of a backwards way to design. You can see on this image here that in this case, you have to have the materials before you design. So you have to go out and measure what materials you have, and then you make the design. And here you can see how it turned out with this patchwork of recycled materials. And here you can see how we take the water from the roof, leading it out to the park. We also had to use some concrete. We were not so happy about that, but the concrete it's what contains the 10-year event. But then we managed to convince the municipality to use recycled concrete, so at least that was also an important part of the project. Here you can see another area of the project. It's a lake. And when we had the project, it was also the task was also to find how can we use water as a resource in the city. And when we discussed it with the people living there, how could water be a resource for you? They said, yeah, well, it would be really nice to have the water when we need it. And the problem is that if you don't have permanent water, there's no water when it's sunny and dry, where you really need the water to water your plant or other things. So we decided together with the users that we wanted to have permanent water so that they could play with the water and water the plants even in the really dry periods in the summer. Having permanent water is tricky because it's in 24 hours. The city in Denmark, it's considered polluted because you have bacteria in the water. So we needed to find a way to clean the water and wanted to do that in a biological way. So we have natural chalk filters where we filtrate the water. So no UV filters, no chemicals, and have a natural system to clean the water. That has worked successfully. And I think it really is something that creates some joy and play for the children in this project. You can really see that the water also, the noise of the water taking the noise from the cars outside in the city, it creates something that really unifies and create a lot of community in the garden. And this part that you can see here, this is done where the 10-year event water is programmed. And here you can see how the water runs through the product and through this greenhouse where you can water the plants. I will run further. I think I have two more projects I want to talk about. And now one of the previous speeches said that we don't need parks, we need food. And I cannot agree more with that. But I think we also need to make cities where it's livable to live. We live densely, and then parks has an important purpose. Okay, I was told that I had 30 minutes, but
that's including the questions.
Okay, but then I have to jump through these projects. Anyway, what I wanted to show with these projects was that a park really gathers a lot of people. It solves rainwater solutions like we do on these football courts here. It's a project where we kept all the trees. We put the extra earth on top of this hill. We managed to reuse some of the functions that was already in the park. And a lot of the rainwater is stored in this area where it used to be grass lawns and where we have put a new biota of elder trees with these pathways lifted up so that animal life and light can come down and treat the ground. This is the last project I want to talk about, and I think it's a project that points into the future. In this project we said nature first and then people second. So as you can see, the whole park is a park that contains rainwater, of course, but it's also a park where we really work with species. All the urban activities is put on the edge where it's already hard surfaces, parking lots, transforming that into livable spaces and activities, and then keep the park as something that is for the nature. Here you can see recycled pavements around the edges, keeping this natural park in the middle. An important part of this is, of course, also mapping around. We did that together with biologics to find biocorridors, looking at what kind of species we could attract and bring into this park. really mapping what species done in the parks, what habitats we need to put in the park to make these species have a possibility to find its way to here. So I'm going to close up now, but I'm sorry this last project was a little bit fast, but using and understanding a place as a tool to handle climate changes and design with nature in order to lower the carbon footprint, creating biological corridors and creating livable spaces. Our work, one stream passing for creating green spaces, sustainability architecture has encountered a challenging crossroad where we have to think differently. So I think we used to work as a space, and I think now we have to find a way to also include human and nature as a natural way of dealing with a space, and not only us humans as something where we observe this. All this revolves around comprehending our surroundings and their sense of local identity. Designing with nature becomes a means to evoke genus loci while recognizing human and integral parts of the equation, similar to a biotope, where the species fulfill a role. It's about achieving a harmonious equilibrium where species mutually affect and depend on each other. We must embrace the concept of humans and integrate part of this biotope. In doing so, we can collaborate with a place as if it were a biotope, striving to create neighborhoods and city spaces in harmony with nature and the unique local identities. We must recognize the power we hold to shape the world around us. And therefore, we must use this feeling of despair as a fuel, to use our profession as a tool to choose hope. Not only to mitigate the damage already done, but to proactively create a better future for our future generations. That was the last word. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you, and
I'm
sorry.
Yeah.
Stay. Thank you so much, Jens. Well spent last minute. So you can go into your mentees and you can ask a question for Jens, or for Hitesh, or for Tilal, the ancestral intelligence. And I have about 1 million questions, but I think I will hold back on them because I think we have a lot from the listeners. So Jens, how did you manage to convince the city council to change their plans and keep the existing urban fabric? How did you do it?
In the project with Tistel?
Yeah.
Well, that's a good thing about competitions. You can choose to follow the program, or you can choose to try to do something differently. And if you're convincing them enough, they're going to change their mind. So in this case, it was a competition. There was a jury, and they found that this was the right proposal. So actually, when they pointed us out as a winner, we didn't need to have that discussion. So, but yeah, that could be different in other projects, I suppose.
Yeah. Do we have Hitesh with us and Nairobi? Maybe if you just lift up your hands for me. Maybe. You take a breath. Every time. Works every time. Hello, Eric. Hello, Hitesh.
Hi there.
Hi there.
Hello, Panda.
So there is a question for you, which is in relationship to the Just Trees Award, how the indigenous knowledge can help address the hunger crisis. How can it address the need of feeding? Was it a clear? Did you understand the question?
Yes, I did. If you look at the indigenous peoples and you look at the way they have tended the land, they did it for centuries and centuries. The hunger problem is more like in the last 70, 80 years. And it has, of course, related to population increases, but I think the worst part has been in the last 10 to 15 years because what climate, the global greenhouse gases have done. And it is truly an international issue because what people are doing in other parts of the world, if you just look at Africa in particular, where the biggest poverty is on the planet and the hunger issues are, if you look at the global greenhouse emissions that they are sequestering up into the air compared to the rest of the world, it's nothing. But they are the ones who are getting affected the most. And that's where a lot of these hunger issues are coming from.
Yes.
So I think it's not something that can be solved overnight, but awareness building is the real issue, is the real answer.
Thank you.
And hope, which is getting more and more difficult to have.
Thank you. I'm going to throw in a question of my own, and it's about this building according to the narrative that you sort of show, that there is a story in the place with the gas explosion, and you're sort of treating the landscape according to the narrative. And I'm curious, and this is a question to both of you, how do we work with our own narratives of the future? How do we sort of cure ourselves from falling into a too sort of optimistic tech will solve everything, or the other way, fall back into a sort of nostalgia of let's just go back to the old days? How do we help ourselves to be in the present, the narratives of the present?
Yeah,
a simple answer, please.
It's a difficult question,
Yeah,
but I think in our practice we try to, of course, think of the global crisis that is all around us and really affects us all. But I think it's also about looking locally and see what we can do here and now, trying to use simple methods, as you saw, some of these ways to treat the earth or handling the water. It doesn't have to be complex things, and not trying to wait till someone comes and saves us. So we have to
stay in the practice.
Yeah, and I think there's a lot historically that we can be inspired from, but of course also bring it into future with the future needs. So I think our focus is now really trying to focus very much on the recycling, biodiversity in this large matter, and see what can we do in our products.
Yeah. Hitesh, what are your thoughts? Staying in the present.
My thought, I would say that the real answer, the narrative, is actually in the balance. What I am seeing is that we are really getting caught up with this flood of the technology side of things, the modern technologies. And we are forgetting the past. We just want to leave it behind. And the answer is a hybrid setup.
Yeah, the hybrid.
No amount of algorithms is going to solve or address issues like what our Ole Roy has just talked about. There's no algorithm that can do that for you.
No.
So the idea is to embrace the future, but do not forget the past.
Yeah, going back to the future.
Work together in a hybrid setup.
Going back to the future, as you said. Thank you. I'm going to take one more question. Sorry?
Back to the future,
Yes. Even if we're running a little bit over time, I'm still going to throw in one last question from the audience with a quick answer from you, Jens, which is how did you work with logistically with the reused materials with the city? We don't have many systems in place for that in Sweden, so.
Well, now we start all our projects saying, can we do it completely with recycled materials? And of course, we're not completely there yet, but I think every project there is different possibilities. In the project I showed here, it's because the municipality of Copenhagen, long before it was fashionable, they had a place where they made a deposit of old used granite, often materials that had a certain quality. So in that project show they had that, and we could go out and map it. And as I said, it's very much okay. Then we have 10 square meters of this and 50 square meters of that. Going back and see how we can design with that. But we also have projects now where, for example, when we need to use steel
Yeah.
Instead of going and buying new steel, we go to the place where you deliver your steel to melt it down, and then we try to pick it before they melt it down, and instead then you can buy the steel quite cheap.
So you find sort of the partners go in dialogue with per material.
It's not becoming cheaper, but you move the money from the resources over to the handcraft, to craftsmanship. Yeah.
Thank you, Jens. Thank you, Hitesh. Give them, you know what.
Thank you. Thank you.
And